As we move away from the extremes of front and back vowels, there are a variety of other vowel distinctions in English. One group involves the central vowels. One of the central vowels is the vowel, referred to as the caret. It is the lower of the mid and the more back of the central vowels. It's lax and unrounded. Found in words like nut, grub, cup, suck, rug. It is found in stressed syllables where you would hear the same thing as an but the syllable is stressed. This is articulated by lowering the jaw, flattening and retracting the tongue, but not as much as it is for an plus the usual closure of the velopharyngeal port to avoid nasal sound, and phonation to provide a sound source. The distinction between the caret and the regular schwa is often ignored in transcription for convenience, depending on the narrowness of the transcription. The distinction between the two having to do with stress on a syllable, which affects both the degree to which the articulation is taken to its full value as well as the duration of the syllable. So similar in sound quality is the referred to as the schwa. It is the mid-central lax unrounded vowel found in unstressed syllables like the second syllable in sofa, the first syllable in above, around, default, belief, potato, the second syllable in donut, middle syllable of kangaroo, the first syllable of enough. This is the standard vowel found in unstressed syllables in English, so most vowels, quote-unquote, reduce to the vowel when there is a syllable that is not stressed. This vowel may be slightly different from an or an I in unstressed syllables, though transcribing this distinction may be influenced by knowledge of the spelling. So, for example, in a word like target or rabbit, is there really an in target or an I in rabbit? Or are you just influenced by seeing that E-like sound or I-like sound in the spelling? The schwa is sometimes referred to as the central vowel or the neutral vowel, in part because it's articulated by not doing much, moving away from sort of a neutral articulatory position. The jaw isn't particularly raised or lowered. The tongue body isn't particularly raised or lowered or fronted or retracted. The lips are not rounded. The actual articulatory position varies a lot by context due to co-articulation. So it may be the case that transcription differences in unstressed syllables between the schwa and the epsilon or the small cap I, the or the I, comes as much from that co-articulation distinction as it does from any actual intentional difference in vowel quality. On X-ray tracing for a speaker, the difference between the unstressed and the stressed is shown here, where the stressed version does have a more extreme lowered and retracted articulation. This distinction between stressed and unstressed versions of these central vowels is a secondary dimension of vowels. So there are some potentially perceived differences in pronunciation or noticeable differences in articulation when the vowels are stressed versus unstressed. But these distinctions are allophonic. They sound basically the same. They aren't used to make contrasts that are distinct from the contrast created by stress, but the articulations are in fact different. So in addition to the quality that we've just talked about in the front and back vowels, we talked about the minor diphthongs A and O that you can find in stressed syllables versus a plain A or O in an unstressed syllable, and we'll have that same difference with sounds next. So the other central vowels in English are the rhodic vowels. So the that's the rhodic reversed epsilon, is a mid-central tense, rounded and rhodic vowel found in words like fur, the first syllable of person, curt, urge, birch, nurse, earn. This is found in stressed syllables, but basically sounds the same as the unstressed version of in so-called R-less dialects, as in British English, for example, you may get an articulation, which sounds a fair amount like the not quite as extreme version of an vowel, or maybe perceived as an vowel in conversation. This is articulated by raising the jaw and raising the tongue body, as well as pursing and protruding the lips, plus closing off the nasal passage and producing phonation in the larynx. The image on the right, we can see the configuration, bringing the tongue body up near the hard palate in articulation, but not as far forward as it is in, say, an E sound. The unstressed version of is referred to as schwa. It is a mid-central lax rounded rhotic vowel that's found in unstressed syllables, so it would be found in the second syllables of paper, color, polar, in the first syllable of perspective, in the second syllable of undermine, and in the first syllable of pursue, where there is stress on a syllable other than the one with Again, this distinction between the two rhotic vowels can be ignored in transcription by some folks as either a factor of convenience, depends on how narrowly somebody is transcribing this distinction. The unstressed is articulated by raising the jaw and raising the tongue body, though not as much as it is for the stressed version of which has a more extreme articulation, similar for the pursing and protruding of the lips, and the usual closure of the nasal passage and phonation. Another secondary dimension that we have for vowels is the diphthongs that we have in English. So in diphthong vowels, we have a distinctive change in vowel quality between what is called the on-glide, the starting sound, to the off-glide, the second sound. These major diphthong qualities are contrastive with both the on- and off-glide monophthongs, but otherwise they act like other vowels. So they have vowel qualities that are different from the monophthong pieces that make them up, but otherwise act like single vowels. It is the case that the part of the articulation of two of the diphthongs is a little bit different from the articulation of the plain monophthong It's an allophonic difference that is hard to hear. You may be able to feel that articulatory difference, but this is the most accurate transcription and tends to be used by kind of mutual agreement, by consensus, by tradition in transcription. In addition to these contrastive diphthongs, I've previously mentioned the two minor diphthongs, A and O, that are found in stressed or final syllables. But there's just no possible contrast with a plain A or a plain O. The diphthong I goes from low central to a high front vowel. It's found in words like light, knife, 5, lime. Generally starts farther forward than the script A vowel. So if we take something like fi versus fa and think about where the articulation starts, or bi versus ba and think about where the articulation starts, in bi the articulation starts farther forward than it does in ba. For typographic convenience, this diphthong is sometimes transcribed with the E symbol rather than the small cap I, even though the small cap I is more representative of the usual ending point of this diphthong. But there isn't a different diphthong in English that ends with that proper E sound, so this is easier to type and is sometimes used. The ow diphthong goes from the low central vowel to a high back rounded vowel, has the same starting position as the I, And again, for convenience, sometimes the U symbol, the plain letter U, is used instead of the upsilon, because there is no distinction between the two diphthongs in English, and it's a little easier to type, if you use the special symbols to do so. You can see in this image on the right for the articulation of the ow diphthong that there isn't necessarily a big change in the location of the tongue body, but there's a considerable change from unrounded to rounded in position of the lips. Our final diphthong is the oi diphthong. That goes from a mid-back rounded vowel to a high front not rounded vowel. This diphthong starts lower than an O sound, so if you compare where the articulation starts in something like bow versus boy, you may feel that height difference. Foe versus foil, you may feel that height difference. And again, because these special characters can be a pain when say clinical reports are typed out, people may just use a plain O and I symbol to represent this diphthong rather than using the more phonetically accurate versions that we will use in this class. In addition to stress differences in the central vowels and these monophthong versus diphthong distinctions, another secondary dimension for vowels is the influence of R, the coda consonant, on the vowel. Sometimes these are referred to as rhodic diphthongs. When we add a vowel to an R coda, we get something like a diphthong sound because the R sound is fairly vowel-like in its articulation. These R-colored vowels are distinct from our rhotic vowels, though. The rhotic vowels are monophthongs. The articulation does not change significantly when producing an sound. In many dialects of English, the number of vowels that can appear before an R coda is limited, so there are fewer contrasts available. In some clinical studies, practitioners prefer to transcribe the R as like an off-glide vowel using the symbol instead, hence the term rhotic diphthong as opposed to an R-colored vowel. This is sometimes done for reasons of phonological analysis. The common R-colored vowels were mentioned as each of the front and back vowels were gone through, but to repeat them here, we have the small cap I in ear, the epsilon in air, the script A in R, and the open O in or, and in some of the dialects, the upsilon in something like tour. Another influence on the perception of vowels is vowels that appear before L, sometimes referred to as velarized vowels or L-colored vowels, somewhat like the effect of an R coda on a vowel. The L is produced a little bit differently depending on whether it's in an onset position or whether it appears as a coda, or as we'll see later, is used as a nucleus in an unstressed syllable. This is transcribed as an L with a little squiggly mark through it called a tilde, and is referred to as a velarized L or a dark L. That velarized L blends with the receding vowel and gives you something with a similar quality to a diphthong. The overlap is not quite as complete as with R, but it can add challenges to identifying vowels before L. In most dialects, there don't appear to be restrictions of which vowels can appear before L, but this may vary a little bit. So in my dialect, I can use all the front vowels, as in feel, fill, fail, fell, and val, like a name, or the first syllable of valley. So from high to low, all the different front qualities are present. For central vowels, gull and girl. For back vowels, pool, pull, pole, paul, and in something like golly, with an ah vowel. So all of the distinctions in monophthong vowels before L appear to be there, as well, for that matter, as all of the diphthongs. But coming up with examples of each of these was a little bit challenging. Vowels can also be nasalized when they are produced before nasal coda consonants. Generally, in the production of English, the velum begins lowering early to open up the nasal passage while the vowel is still being produced before the nasal consonant starts. This results in what is called a nasalized vowel and is transcribed by putting that tilde symbol over the vowel. So something like or u, where the nasal cavity is open during the production of the vowel. This nasalization can make the vowel quality more difficult to perceive and may be the reason why in some dialects a distinction between something like pin versus pen is no longer found. In my dialect, I seem to have the full variety of vowels versus nasals. In the front, teen, tin, tame, ten, tan, from high to low. In the central vowels, ton or turn. In the back vowels, tune, tone, gone, and mom. But I could not come up with an example of the upsilon versus a nasal.